Welcome to A Few Minutes with the CEO. My name is Al O'Grady, and for the next few minutes, we'll be talking to the President and CEO of Crosshair Explorations, Mr. Stu Wallis. Now, Crosshair is a major player when it comes to exploring and developing both uranium and vanadium projects, both in Canada and the U.S. Its key projects are in the state of Wyoming and also in Labrador, Canada. We'll be talking about the latest developments with the company and also how it'll be impacting shareholders in just a moment. Crosshair trades on the TSX under the symbol CXX and also stateside on the MX where the symbol is CXZ, or as they say in the States, CXZ. Mr. Wallis, thanks very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much, Al. Pleased to be here.
Okay. Stu, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the projects that you have going on, let's talk about the markets themselves, because without the demand for these elements, you wouldn't have these projects in the first place. So let's start with the uranium market. What's your take on it right now?
You know, there's 435 commercial reactors producing power. There's 61 under construction, and there's still 162 planned. You know, and going forward, you're looking at a great demand of new reactors in China, Saudi Arabia, and Russia, India, the whole Asia-Pacific rim. And another piece of news is the United States has approved the plans for 2 new reactors, and they're due to approve tomorrow for another 2. So the long-term uranium supply-demand balance is definitely looking good going into the future.
The other element that you're involved with, vanadium. Interesting story there. I've been doing a little bit of research. Lots of different applications as far as vanadium is concerned. I mean, you have batteries, energy, the steel market. What's your overall take on the vanadium market as we go forward?
You know, the new advancement in the use of vanadium is in the battery technology, and we call it the vanadium redox battery. And it's more effective than the lithium battery, which everybody hears about. And the fact is that the vanadium batteries are able to store energy from, say, solar panels and wind farms, and they're able to store this electricity and then discharge it when you need it on the grid. And the advantage is that it can recycle many, many times without losing its capacity to store energy. The other thing is cars going forward in the future, the lithium-vanadium battery, a combination of the 2 elements, has some advantages over just the straight lithium battery in that you can, again, charge and recharge the cycles very quickly. So it's much faster than the standard lithium battery.
Okay, that's an overview in terms of the markets that you're involved with. So let's talk about how you're trying to meet those market demands with your projects more specifically. Good news in Labrador, where a moratorium was lifted. What's the latest with that?
Well, that's an interesting story, Al. Almost 4 years ago, the Labrador Inuit, one of the First Nations groups in Labrador, was concerned about the environmental aspects of, at that time, it was Aurora Energy's Michelin project, which was advancing quite rapidly. They put in a moratorium stating that they did not want to see uranium mining. Unfortunately, they didn't realize that if you're not going to allow uranium mining, then nobody's going to be interested in exploring for uranium in the first place. And although Crosshair was not directly affected by the Inuit lands and their moratorium, both our resources are outside of their lands, it threw a kibosh on any capital raising that companies in Labrador were going to do. And so as a result of that moratorium, we shifted our emphasis to Wyoming, which is part of the story we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Right.
But in Labrador, just last month, they announced that the moratorium was lifting. And so it's gone away now. And the reason is that they now have their environmental regulations in place. They have a land use plan. Draft number 2 is being circulated, and that should be through the legislature and the assembly later this fall. So what it means to Crosshair and the other companies that are up there, which include Paladin Energy, which bought Aurora Energy Resources a year ago for $1.90 a pound. Great price to get in early to a huge project. It means that everybody's going to be going back to Labrador and exploring. People are able to raise funds without looking at a huge discount. And so up in Labrador, we have two projects at the present time. We went back last year, did a little work. We're going back this year. We're going to spend another couple of $1 million to expand these resources. And up in Labrador, one of the deposits contains our vanadium resource, which is, amounts to some 147 million pounds. Basically, it's 14 million tons of indicated ore and 28 million tons of inferred ore. That's a lot of pounds of uranium that's associated with a lot of pounds of vanadium associated with the uranium mineralization, and it sits in the hanging wall of the open pit. So any development of an open pit to remove the uranium takes the vanadium as a byproduct. So even at the lower prices that is sitting there right now, it could conceivably be a valuable byproduct of the deposits as we go forward in the development of them.
You had touched on Wyoming. Let's change our focus to that state. You've obviously been rolling up your sleeves, working hard in Wyoming with a project known as Juniper Ridge. What's the latest with that?
Well, it's an interesting project that we acquired from Strathmore Resources last year, looking to boost our emphasis in Wyoming, which is a friendly state. It's relatively easy to permit. There's a lot of companies active in Wyoming for that reason. And as I said, we purchased the Juniper Ridge from Strathmore. We'll end up paying about $1.30 a pound when it's all over down the road in a couple of years. And it's a good project. We've got a first resource that came out about a month ago of 5 million pounds sitting there. And this, people will say, well, 5 million pounds, it's not a lot. Well, it's not yet. We're going back this year. The potential is sitting there at somewhere between 9 and 10 million pounds of good grade material based on the historical resources that Uranga Shell Shaft found. So as I said, we're sitting there with a little over 4 million tons at an 06 grade, which looks to us to be amenable to an open pit heap leach operation, which will keep both capital costs and operating costs down going forward.
Okay, you mentioned capital costs. Of course, money makes the world go around. You're well-financed to develop these projects in Wyoming and also in Labrador. You got an infusion of cash recently. Care to comment on that?
Well, I have to say we just announced the completion of a financing a couple of weeks ago. It was a combination of flow-through and hard dollars. So we're well-financed with close to, over $7 million in the bank right now. And currently we're looking at spending about $6 million of that. A good chunk of it on Juniper Ridge, close to $3 million there. And up in Labrador, we've got drill programs amounting to $2.5 million. So, going forward, Crosshair is well-financed, and we've got three drill programs coming up this summer, and they're all designed to expand the known resources that we have.
Okay, you're almost answering my next question. If I'm a shareholder in the company, what are my expectations? What can I expect from you in the company? Short term, next 3 to 6 months. Long term, next 3 to 5 years.
Well, short term, as I just mentioned, we've got these 3 drill programs, 2 in Wyoming and the one up in Labrador. We're going to spend the money. We're going to look at increasing the potential, looking at the potential of those deposits, and we anticipate increasing the resources in all the projects. There's no problem there. Looking at the potential that we have based on the previous drilling, and also on in the case of Juniper Ridge, the potential from the pre-feasibility studies that exists historically. So, all in all, short term, we're going to have a lot of news out on some good drilling projects.
Stu, that's it as far as the formal questions are concerned. As always, my guest always gets the last word. Any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to add right now?
Well, yes, Al. I will say that Crosshair, compared to its peers, is definitely undervalued. partly because of the stigma of the Labrador moratorium. We took a 50% haircut when that came into effect. And even though we had a good position in the market before Fukushima, again, we seem to be trading at 50% off our peers. That's a great discount, and I think it's a great opportunity for people to have a good look at Crosshair and see the value in the company as we move forward.
Okay. On that note, Stu, I want to thank you very much for your time and sharing your thoughts with us about Crosshair Explorations.
Well, great, Al. I sure appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
All right, and I look forward to future discussions as well. Crosshair trades on the TSX under the symbol CXX and also stateside on the Amex under the symbol CXZ, or as they say in the USA, CXZ. And you've been listening to Mr. Stu Wallis, President and CEO of Crosshair Explorations, on A Few Minutes with the CEO, produced by RBL Communications. I'm Al O'Grady. Thanks very much for joining us.